Um, so, Judy, just go ahead and just give us a brief update.
So I'm in Bethlehem at Bethlehem University, volunteering at a program here that's been going on for 20 years for biodiversity and sustainability and honoring the natural history of Palestine, the people and the land. Before I got here, I was at a place called Tent of Nations. And one of my friends described it as being a human shield for an organic farm to exist around illegal settlements. So the more international people there are at this organic farm that's been in the Nasser family for 150 years, um, the less the settlers were cause problems for them and try to steal their land. A couple of years ago, they bulldozed ancient olive trees. And while I was there, they were bulldozing, roads around the farm and yelling obscenities in the middle of the night. And I think before I went there, I thought illegal settlements were like these little places where people had bulldozed a house and turned it into rock. But when you are here in Bethlehem and you look out on the hills, you see cities. I mean, you see people who have stolen entire villages and then turned them into modern cities. So you are in occupied Bethlehem, you're in the occupied part, and you can't even go on the road to that place. And they're in swimming pools, and you are on restricted water, so you can barely have a garden and barely have enough to wash your clothes. I've never been in an apartheid situation before, and it's really opening my eyes, to how that is. So the good news is I'm at a place where we're doing really good work. I myself personally am feeding two baby hyenas that were rescued from poachers and a little tiny fox that was emaciated and lots of plants that are native to Palestine. And I'm just really loving it. And I've met the most amazing peace activists who are out there every night protesting. And I pray for them every day that they don't go to jail, because there are thousands and thousands of Palestinians in jail, many of them for no reason at all.
Well, thank you for being there and
Yeah,
for warming us up for what we will. What I hope we'll hear from you multiple times
you bet.
in the weeks to come. Well, uh, Julian Watkins. What can I say? Um, I've introduced him 5 times, 4 times among us, and 1 time for my podcast. And so let me just remind everybody how I discovered him, if you will. I subscribe to LGBTQ Nation. And in 2020, I saw that he was Hero of the Year. And so I just thought, I read about him and just thought, oh, let me try. He has no idea who I am, but let me try to see if he'll come in and talk to us. And I still remember his talk that day and each time he has addressed us. Dr. Watkins is one of 40 under 40 because he's a young man, 40 under 40 honorees recognizing leaders whose creativity and innovation are strengthening communities across the United States. He was asked 3 words to describe himself, and he said visionary, big hearted, and hopeful. He was asked the best part of his job, and he said, I'm in the people business. I love people and believe in us. I just, I won't get into, where all the things, where he went to school, all of his biography, but just to say that he has enriched us over the past few years. And I was really taken when he started working with underserved people in New York during COVID, during the pandemic, and before that with folks dealing with HIV/AIDS. So it is always a joy for us to host you. Always a joy. I mean, I'm just beaming and just delighted to be able to share you with everybody again. So just take it away.
Thank you so much. And very happy to be here and to see familiar faces, friendly faces. It's hard to believe that it has been that many years since the beginning of all of this, the start of the COVID pandemic. I was just talking to someone the other day at work about how it feels just like yesterday, but at the same time, it feels like we're in a whole new world right now. It's such a, I don't know, it's such a disorienting feeling, but at the same time, I do feel hopeful, just by like thinking how things can just change so much. And, the bad things that we're facing today, I feel like this could be, a world away in a few short, months, years, even tomorrow, if we really think about it. So I'm super happy to be here with you all this morning. And the message that I prepared is called The Beloved of the Earth. And I want to just start out by sharing a poem that I wrote back in April of this year. I wrote it in a time of, of great heartache. I lost my grandmother in April, my beautiful 97-year-old grandmother. And I was so, just understanding how life works, and she had been sick for a while, and knowing it as like a necessary like a part of life. I wrote this short poem called "My Grief is Like a Cloud," and just wanted to really, I guess, open up our conversation by talking a bit about grief. I think even from the reading today, thinking about, when we, days like Father's Day, big days like this, a lot of folks are, really confronted with their grief if they've lost someone, a father figure. And it's kind of, how do we live with grief and understand it as like this part of life and not something to be afraid of? And so I'll start with a short poem, if you'll indulge me. Um, my grief is like a cloud. It's a natural part of life, like the weather. My grief is like a cloud. Some days it's thunderous. Some days it rains. Sometimes when I go through it, there's turbulence. It's a natural part of life. It's not all bad, it just is. Some days my grief provides cooling shade. Some days it frames a perfect sunset. It inspires poems. It's a place I visit in my dreams. My grief is like a cloud, natural, like the weather. I gave up trying to control it, but I do wish there was a forecast. One thing I don't think that we talk about enough is grief. And I've been thinking a lot about it, as I shared with my recent loss in my family. I guess it's just a fact of living and just a result of living that you have to reacquaint yourself with grief. But I think also living through the past few years and all of the loss and all of the pain that we've experienced, I think I've become more sensitive to it, or at least more aware. And I've come to realize over the last few years that I really did need to reimagine. I think that we all could use some reimagining and reacquainting ourselves with grief. Grief as a part of life. We are all born and one day we will all die. We are all part of this age-old cycle of life and death. At some point, we will all lose someone that we love. And yet, in our culture, the one that we live in currently, we turn away from our grief. We try to avoid it and keep it at a distance. We keep it to ourselves and we apologize for it. Grief, like a number of feelings and parts of our lives, is seen as negative, and as such, it's seen as unpolite conversation, taboo even. I've come to understand grief differently. I understand that to grieve is to love. After a loved one passes, Grief can be like medicine. It's up to us to decide where we direct it and how we direct that love. I'm just grateful, when I think about grief as medicine, that love is much sweeter than a spoonful of sugar. Like grief, like love, grief comes in many different varieties. There's situational grief, that grief that you feel in response to life-altering situations, like from the loss of a job to divorce, health decline, and even aging. There's a part of grieving what was, what used to be, how I used to be, how we used to be. But this situational grief also translates to larger societal changes, from tragedies and extreme weather events to wars, genocides, pandemics. I also believe that this concept of moral injury itself is an expression of grief. Thinking about the helplessness and the disappointment of witnessing and experiencing great injustices. Think about the last few months, multiple genocides, witnessing the impact of climate, the human impact of climate change in our lives. I think that the body really does keep the score, as they say. There's also this grieving process that comes with a shift in consciousness. When we change our perspectives, it can be really hard. And thinking about what comes with it, that can be hard as well. And you realize that the way that you believed about a thing or understood something about life, about the world, or even yourself, when you realize that it wasn't quite true or it doesn't resonate like it used to, or 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 you're just not something that you feel like you can abide by anymore. When you find out that key details may have been left out, for your own good, quote unquote, or with the best intentions, it feels like a manipulation has occurred. That can be painful to realize and to move on from. When there are feelings and value systems and culture and history and identity, family, all involved and intertwined within these beliefs and behaviors, it can be hard. And hearing the testimonies, those courageous testimonies of ex-Zionists recently, you can feel that pain. It's palpable as they're sharing, as they're speaking out, at the risk of great personal loss and real mortal danger, with this moral clarity, really embracing that their duty to denounce the genocidal actions of the occupying state and its violent settlers. It's also very reminiscent of something that I'm very familiar with growing up here in the United States, when I hear the testimonies of white Americans who awake to the horrors of American racial apartheid, generation after generation, and to see folks still coming to those realizations despite all of the roadblocks and the danger. It hurts when I think about this transition of about the grieving of a way of knowing in a way that we used to know or think or believe, but it's a pain that we must prepare for so that we can endure. Because on the other side of that discomfort lies life, and how we handle that discomfort should be considered. And I think that is where grace comes in. Grace should be liberally given in the process of grieving. Grace must not be overindulgent, though. It should never go in a singular direction. It should never be coddling, and it must be grounded in the truth, no matter how uncomfortable. The grief we must endure from a loved one, from the loss of a loved one, or from the situational grief, or from the grief of knowing, is part of all of our whole collective circumstance. It's part of the human condition. It connects us to each other. We all will have to nurse a broken heart at some point in our lives. And I think that that's the way forward. It's with that broken heart. And I don't think that we can waste any more time denying this basic truth about our lives. We can and we must resist the urge to turn away, and we have to do it every day. We must push through and face all of it, embrace all of it, even the hard parts, even the uncomfortable parts. And when I think about my own grief journey of recent, I actually never felt more alive. Going to the funeral, celebrating the life of my grandmother. Within that short time, within the last few weeks of her life, she got to hold her great granddaughter, and kiss that baby. And I got to meet that baby. And somehow I ended up her godfather. It's like this circle of life. And I just felt so connected, and watching what's been going on in Palestine, I felt the most Palestinian I could ever feel, because I may not know the exact pain, but I know that pain. I know that pain of loss and what my people have been through and what we've known the whole time. And it had me really thinking about those beloved people, the ones who keep transmitting those messages, the ones who protect those ways of knowing and pass those traditions and transmit that love, that same love that had been passed on from generation to generation, despite what people have told us, despite what what people have done to us. And I think about the beloved of the earth. In these weary times, I find myself transfixed by the ones who continually choose us. And by us, I mean humanity. The ones who resist, the ones who sing and scream and shout, the ones who fight for us. In the mouth of the dragon, in the heart of empire. Those people who've been forged in fire. The keepers of great traditions, the holders of old knowledge and powerful magic. The creators of culture and the authors of love and liberation. The griots and the poets. The ones who care enough to always write it down, and who continue to love us enough to know that it must also be said out loud and sung. The practitioners and the healers of many traditions, the doulas and the guides through life and death, who are acquainted with grief and undiluted by the delusion of empire, of white supremacy, and who are steadfast in their faith and their connection to the spirit and their connection to us. The movers and the shakers, those beloved ones who feel it all and still show up. Those who make space, the ones who hold it, and the ones who give it freely. The silo breakers and the bridge builders. The curious ones and the dreamers, the stargazers. The ones who love all the children as their own. Those who honor the elders and know a thing or two about ancestors, and who grieve for every soul. The ones who know that the truth matters, that it matters enough to fight for it or to die for it. The ones who know that grace must be given away and know that any life worth living requires a vision of love beyond ourselves. When I think about the beloved of the earth, I think about the ones who in every generation of man have known true beauty and who have studied love, who have danced for joy against all odds, and who write about mercy. The ones who choose to be human, the ones who do not allow themselves to become capitalists, colonizers, or kings. I think about the ones who choose us, who choose mutuality over domination, community over the romanticized idea of solitude. Those who know that abolition, just like revolution, is always the story of a new beginning. The blessed salt of the earth, the ones who remain unflinching in the face of conflict. Those who choose to fight for love and who are committed to do so every time. The keepers of community, the tree huggers and the tenders of this beautiful earth, the bearers of the light, the beloved of the earth. Many people automatically begin to think about those well-known figures. They are important. And as Toni Morrison has said often, these folks who are fighting racism, because racism is a scholarly affair. It always has been. And I think about those big figures as the ones who have had to fight on that scale, on those fronts. But I also think about how racism is also very pedestrian, ordinary and everyday, upheld by social norms and the daily attitudes and beliefs and these biases. The beloved of the earth show us that the struggle is happening in a variety of settings, from boardrooms to bedrooms, social media, and school courtyards. The beloved ones show us how varied, intersectional, and personal our resistance must be. Our resistance to domination must be every day. As Angela Davis said, freedom is a constant struggle. We can no longer afford to see these issues as someone else's business. If we can cut through the noise and keep our eyes open, we can see that these issues of the world are right here knocking at our doors. I think that we also can't forget that at the same time, that we're also seeing the undoing of an old world order. And I think that's something that that we should celebrate, even though it's scary. The world is rejecting a world order that was imagined in medieval Europe, a world of conquest and expansion, unlimited accumulation and growth at no matter the cost. A value system that imagined humanity as one way and the rest of us as untamed, subhuman. Not fully animal, because we were able to watch the kids and sometimes birth their kids, but in another class that needed to be civilized, needed to be made right and cleansed. That sees these others as worthy of annihilation if they resist or exist in any way that obstructs so-called national interests. But I'm so happy to say and to see that these old justifications are no longer standing, that the global shaking off is happening and a new world order is being established. The earth is literally and figuratively trembling. And we can be and must be part of this movement to usher in the new world. It is in our everyday actions that we can create this brave new world by rejecting dominator thinking, by choosing love over greed, by spreading kindness, by moving with the spirit of generosity. It's these individual acts of prioritizing resistance and rest over productivity. These things can help make it easier for others. Folks can see that light. And as we follow the light of love in a loveless world, it's a revolutionary act. As we grow in our work of love, we become stronger, our capacity for love increases, and we may find new ways to amplify this message, and we may fan the flames of love like a wildfire. The longer I live, the more I'm convinced that it's too tall a task or an ask for anyone to want to save the world. It's an impossible task for any one person to take that on. I'm also convinced, though, that though our responsibility is not to save the world, that we do have to love it. We have to add it to our to-do list. We have to move in ways that are contrary to popular belief. We have to understand and know that the world is not dead, that the world is alive, but it's not well. It's not this limitless resource to be bought or sold. It's something to be cared for and love. Robin Wall Kimmerer, the indigenous plant ecologist, educator, and writer of the gorgeous book, Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants, once said, one of the reasons elders held on to traditional knowledge and teachings against all odds was because one day there would come a time when all of the world would be in need of the wisdom. Any ideology that says otherwise is useless and suicidal and must be abandoned. And so as we shake off the old world, we must remember the beloved ones and their wisdom, the encyclopedias of knowledge that did not burn, the legacies that survive for such a time as this. I encourage everyone to explore what has been hidden from us, to go back and find what was taken from you, to reject the dominator urge to rank and create hierarchies of knowledge, understanding that our oldest teacher, nature, tells us that in life there must be balance and that there is room for everyone. And so as I close and as we think about Father's Day and we think about the beloved ones, I invite everyone to think about the beloved ones in their lives, those who may no longer be with us, but those people, those figures who inspire us, who we take with us on life's journey, those who inspire us as we travel around the world, as we smile at our neighbors, those who taught us those ways of being, those people who have that knowledge that the world could use right now. I invite you to think about those figures. I invite you to say their name and invite you to share and tell the stories of those people and spread that message of love. I don't know what the next chapter of history where we're moving towards, but I do know that anything that we love can be saved. So thank you so much, and I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Julian, for those words. It's hard to even pick a spot where to start, but I would say, yeah, how do we shake off the old world? Because it definitely feels like we're birthing a new one. It's just, empire is, because it knows it's declining. It's like punching the hardest so that it can survive as long as possible. So in these times when empire is punching back, how do we remember our beloveds and to remember all the lessons that grief teaches us?
Yeah. I mean, we got to talk about it. You know, we have to say their names. We have to say why. We have to tell those stories because that's where the strength is. You know, that's where the magic is, you know. And you have to really put it out there and really pass that on. And we have to be talking about these things openly. It can't just be about the weather and, you know, the score. Like, we got to be talking about some very real things. So I think it's just really just remembering is how we can really remember who we are and who we come from and the fact that we're still here.
The thing that really struck me about what you shared about grief was that the power in it, and how you said grief is love, grief equals love. And so that really hit me a different way, you know, that so much I've been caught up in the grieving or the anger and not being able to move past that. And so I was really struck by some of the things that you said, like grace should not be going, it can't be going in a singular direction. It needs to be going all around. So I just felt like, gosh, there was so much that you shared that I want to think about. I want to learn. I mean, to me, it sounds like, okay, so that must be what's empowering you to be making all the change, you know, rather than getting stuck. So thank you. This is a lot I want to digest. There's actually a lot of notes I want to address, but it looks like David is also raising his hand.
Julian, thank you very much. And I'm just so moved. That was such a beautiful message. I'm sorry for your grandmother. And I just wanted to thank you. The poem was nice, but for me, your whole message was a beautiful poem. So thank you and God bless you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It means a lot.
You had, could you share again the title or the name of the author, the indigenous plant scientist, and the book?
Robin Wall Kimmerer. Yeah, it's called Braiding Sweetgrass. It's a beautiful book. She's a scientist by training, but you know, she wrote this book over, like, I think around like over 10 years ago, and then more recently started gaining popularity because she's telling these stories. She has a scientific mind and all the scientific language, and at the same time, she's, you know, really talking about these stories that of her life, but also of her people's life, and just really weaving it all together. It's this beautiful, beautiful book.
Yeah, she's actually spoken at UCSB a couple of times. She's really Brigida.
I just wanted to say that your message was very, very telling to me. And I just wanted to give a perspective from the other side. My parents were immigrants, so we don't have any relatives in the United States. And my parents kept very close to us children. So we really didn't have the experience of death or of grieving or of any of that. And when my father passed away, we found ourselves so ill prepared. We didn't know anything. And I have to say it was a real loss. It was a real loss. You know, I wish I could go back and do things differently. I feel so much more prepared now that I've seen one person pass away in my family for the next person. But I wish I had known that before.
Yeah.
So thank you for your message. I hope people take it to heart. It's very important.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, it's a difficult thing. That I think it is a big disservice to ourselves if we can't like face the thing that is happening. Like, people are being born, people are living, people are dying, and to like avoid it until you can't, it can feel like a disservice.
Well, especially now with multiple genocides happening, it feels like that may be what's going on for some people. It's almost like they're just like in full denial. Um, but one thing that I will share that has been a surprise for me is that I get a lot of hostility, and yeah, there has been a couple people that have like given me the side eye and stuff, but for the most part, people are like supportive, you know, and they're like, oh, I like your kafia. And so just finding ways to talk to people so that we're not enabling denial, right? I think is really helpful.
Rosie's trying to say something, but she's muted.
Oh, Rosie,
Yeah.
go for it.
I agree with everything that you just shared, Ana Rosa. I just want to thank you. I feel like I could just sit and listen to you talk and share and just like be mentored by your beautiful words of encouragement. I'm a grieving widow, 2 years, 6 months yesterday. And I cry every day, to be honest with you. I'm going to say my beloved's name, Efrain. I called him Easy and Papa, because that's what our kids call him, Papa. And now our only grandchild, Papalito. I talk to him every day. I wrote to him in his obituary for today, and for my brother, who was like a stand-in father, because my brother Joe, when we called him Pinchy Joe, because he was so witty. And anyhow, that's just how the Aguilar clan rolls. Go green, yes. I agree. I don't think that death in like the culture, you know, the Mexicano culture, I will say, for the most part, it's embraced, actually. We have Dia de los Muertos, you know, and we celebrate our loved ones. I have my little mini altar here where I have my husband's remains, and I burn sage every day as I pray early in the morning and thank the Lord God Almighty for the beautiful husband that I was blessed to have. But I want to thank you again for your sharing, because I just embrace all of what you said. And I think it is very important that we do say, stop the genocide, regardless of what anyone around us may think or even what they say back to us, when we boldly bring it just out and proclaim it. Stop the genocide. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie. I mean, I think that's it. I think it's the naming, you know, we have to say their names. And I think, and for a lot of folks, what has happened is we've been told that, well, the evidence doesn't show that these rituals, these practices, you know, these traditions, you know, going through like that it's nothing, you know what, that's nothing. There's no evidence to support that. And I really do, in my heart of heart, know that we just don't have the tools to measure it. But you can't say that saying folks' names and remembering does not do something. You know, we can't say that that feeling that you feel when you catch the breeze, you know, and something reminds you of them, you know, when someone, you know, like all of those things, like they can't say that it's not true. And so I really just encourage folks to like do it and like to get in that practice of saying folks' names. That's how we remember who we are, but how we remember those, you know, the people who've passed on before us.
Reverend Judy.
Yeah, I've been feeling so much emotion during your talk and now, and I realized that although I've never really acknowledged it, I used to think that I lived in apartheid Key West, because I lived in Bahama Village, and my friends in my neighborhood would not go certain places with me because of things that happened to them and their family in Key West. And until I actually lived there, you know, I used to think of Key West as being this really open and progressive place. And then when I actually lived there, I realized it was a really oppressive, racist place. And that was when the whole immigration thing was going on. And we used to go and try to talk to kids in Homestead, you know, that were in prisons there, away from their families. So there's so much, you know, that we have experienced, and thank you for bringing that, you know, to our attention, and that is still going on in our country and in so many countries. I think the thing with Palestine for me is it's so big, you know, like I can't almost wrap my mind around it. You know, every day there's a new atrocity, every day there's a new massacre, you know, of people here that know people there, you know, so the grief is just, it's so extraordinary, so overwhelming. Yesterday, the people that I am volunteering for shared with me that there's a girl by the name of Shema Sudain. I wrote her name down because I wanted to say it. And that she was the best high school student ever, like in Palestine. Like she was just so brilliant. And she was killed along with her entire family. And yeah, and that was just the other day. You know, it's been going on for so long. And I think I don't even know what to do with the grief about it.
You know, the way, you know, for me as a Black American, and understanding how big things can feel, and really just, you know, there are fast genocides and then there are slow ones. And I think I think about that often too, you know, about like what has happened, what is going on for us, you know, in this place that is, you know, that is this unadopted homeland where you're not fully home, you're not fully accepted, where the same kind of colonial mindsets are there, you know, where somehow you're, you know, you're like this other, you're like, you occupy this strange place and you know, in the idea of the nation, you know, that you can't, there's somehow you're not like us, you're not like this, like you don't like nice things, that, you know, you don't deserve, you know, these decent things. And then that like, you know, that your life doesn't matter so much, you know. Where are the all lives matter crowd, you know, who were shouting us down when we made those simple declarations? But I think despite all of that, I think that where the way that I make sense of it again is just having that moral clarity, right? Knowing the truth about the situation, and knowing that what we are seeing and what we are witnessing, you know, when the dominator culture, when folks who are really clinging to these delusions that they have constructed everything about themselves, you know, and about the way they see and understand the world, everything is constructed on this lie. You see people like rear up on their hind legs and like fangs out. People will do any and everything, including, you know, the things that everyone has committed, that, you know, the never again things. So it's understanding that we know the truth, and understanding that they are that scared and they are that shook. And knowing that we do have the strength, and there are a lot of them, but I think there's more of us, you know, there is a global majority that at this moment is rejecting it, who is saying no, you know. And even in this country, there is a majority, there are people of, you know, you know, who love freedom and choose humanity, and who are saying absolutely not. And, you know, people in power, they know that the jig is up, and they're doing everything they can to tire us that down. But there's so many more of us, and we are strong. We have to really endure, not be distracted by the distractions and the lies and the war machine, and not be wrapped up in the, you know, in the narratives that are designed to pull us out of the game, and, you know, get in that headspace and try to unpack and defend and denounce and all. It's like, no, we know what that is. We're not, but we have to really, in this moment, stick to the guns and know that truth so that we can endure them. We have to outlast them because empires do fall, the British Empire has fallen. All of the Romans have fallen, like everybody else up until today. And the US is just the latest one on the game, but we see how it's crumbling in our place as a pariah nation. So I think we just keep the faith and shuffle the cards, and we'll outlast them, I think.
Yeah.
Lisa, with her hand up a second ago. Do you still want to speak?
Sure. I just wanted to throw this out. I know, we're all very engaged in the genocide that's going on in Palestine, but are you giving as much effort and energy to fixing what is right in our own backyard? I mean, are you going out and volunteering to be in the ballot at the voting booths? Are we running for city council? That's the best way. I mean, we can walk to those places. Palestine, I can't get to right now. I mean, I'd have to have a plane, I'd have to have whatever. And I know most of us can't access that, but we can walk right where we are here and make a change in this society and fix this damaged place. And we really need to do that right now, because there are still people here who want to take away even your right to vote. And we need to concentrate on the things that we can do too. You can't just sit there and complain about the things that you can't affect as much. You have to do the work here and right in front of our face. And we're not doing that, you guys, and we need to start. We really do.
I think the great thing that this time is showing us is how interconnected these things are, and the local actions that we can take, on our daily, every day, that we can actually do both, because it's all interconnected. And so as we can protest, and boycott and divest, and we can do all of these local actions here, that also is getting at the other beast, And I think it's really this long game, is also understanding that this is happening on many fronts, right? And the people who can do the local action in the heart of empire can actually move the needle over there.
Yes.
Really understanding that it's that, and understanding that we may not have we can support that in the ways that we can, but it's understanding that we got to have that frame that we are doing the both and.
Yeah, and exactly. And the more that we fix our own little circle, the more we can help them.
Exactly.
That's exactly what I mean. That's exactly it. Once we clean up our own backyard, and then we can help our neighbor.
Yeah.
And
these bigger issues actually can really be the driving force that people can galvanize around, right? And these bigger things that those movements can feed into the local movements, and it is the ripple effects that happens, and you can get that mighty wave, right? To really understand that it is interconnected and it is big, but that's why the movement has to be big and diverse and varied. We have to be doing all of the things all at once.
How we connect the issues, right? Because the fact that we've been spending millions of dollars in Israel so that they can have healthcare and education and all these things are the reasons why we don't have them here. And the fact that there's always money for war, but there's not money for folks here in our very own community. So I think it's imperative that we do both. And we have, students at Cal State Channel Islands. We have students at UC Santa Barbara that we can be supporting who have liberated zones, encampments, who need safety. Like they're struggling to keep their safety watches, like 24/7 because Zionists are constantly trying to infiltrate their camp. So and those are like walkable, drivable, busable places that we can go to. Judith, I see you itching to speak again.
I just want to say it's a really small world, guys. I mean, most of the settlers are American Jews, and most of the people I've been working with since I've been here a month have been from Columbia University, Union Theological, they come from the encampments here, and then back to the US, so I think, it's what's in your heart to do. It's what's yours to do. It's what, grace leads you to do. Like, there's no place that God is not. And it's all so interconnected.
And I will just add that the vast majority of Zionists in this world are actually Christian nationalists living in the United States. And I think it's really understanding that too, and the role that, those of us in this country have to play, and how things are weaponized.
Hey, everybody, can we just say thank you to Dr. Watkins in the house today? I
Thank you very
mean,
much.
yeah, this was so special. As you spoke, I was thinking, Julian, of how many people start out doing one thing, but it is only a bridge to becoming who they are. And you as a medical doctor, I was thinking of people like Gabor Mate and Deepak Chopra and so many others. They're medical doctors, but it's almost like that's the springboard for them, because you were ministering medicine to us in this moment. I mean, I feel like I've been treated. And so I just want to submit that to you for your consideration, that, I think the day will come when we will hear your heartbeat more expansively in the global community, and we will be able to say, oh yeah, we have him every year on Zoom. We've been having him for years, and and folks will be saying, no way. But I just feel the medicine. So what you shared with us today, is this going to be submitted for publication anywhere?
Yeah, I'm working on a writing project.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right.
More. That means a lot.
I
said it means a lot, to feel, what you shared, and I feel like deeply it is. I mean, it has been that, really trying to make do the work in a very particular way, and it feels familiar. Not like, I haven't seen it, like, for me, I haven't done it before, but it feels like familiar, and it is really like this deep medicine practice. Like, how can we apply some of these principles and really try to speak to some of the things that go unspoken, and it's really trying to do that.
Well, family, let's have communion. Over the past few some of our recent Wednesdays, we have talked about decolonizing the decolonial dimensions of potluck. And I think of that now when we do communion, because historically, before the church became this formal institution, communion was really ancillary. It was accompanied by potluck. I mean, it brought people together from different socioeconomic backgrounds, and we are here participating in potluck. And so whatever your elements are, and let me just say this, we are sustained by the potluck of your funds as well. I mean, I'm saying that because some bring like the turkey a lot, and some bring the sleeve of Oreos. If it's from your heart, then that's good. But just bear in mind, be aware that there are people who are really spending time in the kitchen to make us happen. So let's look at closely the potluck aspect of our existence and continuation. All right, so whatever you have on hand, if you would take that now, on the night in which Jesus was executed by the state, on that night, he, he was graceful. The record is that he was graceful. I mean, there were expressions of lament and pain and sorrow, which are very normal, and they go with grief and disappointment, and physical torment. Those things are very real. And at the same time, we read the story and we see, wow, in the midst of the suffering, there was grace. May we enter into grace together. This is the body of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Would you eat and drink? To our care.